Welcome to this deep dive. If you're listening to this right now, I know exactly the mode you're in.
Right.
You're looking to absorb something meaningful. You want multiple perspectives, and you really want to walk away with that satisfying aha moment.
Yeah.
But without feeling like you're just drowning in this massive ocean of disorganized information.
Right, which happens all too often.
It really does. So that is exactly what we're going to deliver today. We are exploring a genuinely fascinating linguistic transcript, and it's focused entirely on the vocabulary of March.
It's a great topic.
It is. And the mission today isn't just to, memorize a few dictionary definitions.
No, not at all.
It's to extract the advanced English lexicon, the really subtle cultural nuances, and honestly, the profound psychological impacts that are tied to this incredibly specific, incredibly turbulent time of year.
Exactly.
We want to arm you with the exact words to articulate an experience that every single one of us goes through, yet we often struggle to accurately describe it.
It is excellent to be here, and you've hit on exactly why this specific collection of words is so compelling. We're looking at a lexicon born out of sheer necessity.
Yes, necessity.
Right, because when we analyze this vocabulary, we are really analyzing the human mechanism for coping with environmental chaos.
Wow, yeah, environmental chaos.
It's not just about what the words mean in a textbook. It's about why these specific phonetic structures and these idioms, why they perfectly capture the physical and mental endurance required to survive that shift from the dead of winter into the promise of spring.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the core duality presented in our material today is just perfectly articulated.
It really is.
On one hand, you have this undeniably beautiful botanical awakening. The earth is quite literally coming back to life after months of dormancy.
Right, the blooming and blossoming.
Exactly. But existing right alongside that beauty, often on the exact same afternoon, is a physically punishing, entirely deceitful experience. And the source brilliantly describes it as a meteorological roller coaster.
That phrase, meteorological roller coaster,
Right.
It's the perfect anchor for this discussion.
I love it so much.
It immediately establishes the lack of control. Because, a roller coaster isn't something you steer.
No, you just hold on for dear life.
Right. It is something you're strapped into, and you are entirely at the mercy of its momentum. Sitting famely between the frozen, sort of stagnant depths of February
Ooh, February.
and the comparatively stable warmth of April, March, is just defined by wild, erratic fluctuations.
And erratic is the perfect word there. And volatile.
Right.
Volatile is the other adjective that keeps coming up in the transcript to describe this period.
Yes. Volatile.
We use the word volatile so casually now, usually for financial markets or, internet discourse.
Right. The crypto market is volatile.
Exactly. But applying it to the physical atmosphere we walk through every day, it changes the stakes entirely. It implies an environment that can turn on you without a moment's notice.
It forces us to confront our own vulnerability. When we say the atmosphere is volatile, we're acknowledging a sudden and often violent shift in state. Yeah. Human beings have spent thousands of years and untold resources building environments that insulate us from volatility.
That's true, we have.
We have central heating, we have weather-sealed cars, predictive radar on our phones. We operate under this grand illusion of equilibrium.
Oh, illusion of equilibrium. That is so true.
And then March arrives, completely indifferent to our engineering, and it shatters that illusion. It strips away our modern conveniences and reminds us that we are perpetually at the mercy of the elements.
Which perfectly explains why human beings have been trying to neatly categorize this month for centuries.
Yes.
We are so desperate to make sense of the chaos, which brings us to that famous English proverb. March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb.
It is a profound piece of cultural imagery that attempts to impose a narrative arc onto unpredictable weather.
A narrative arc, yes.
The lion represents the onset. It's tempestuous, it's aggressive, and it's loud. This maps perfectly onto the gale force winds and biting cold that typically characterize the beginning of the month.
It really roars into existence.
Exactly. And then the proverb promises us a narrative resolution. The month supposedly exhausts its anger, transitioning into the lamb, a tranquil, benign, docile conclusion.
You survive the roar, and your reward is a serene, fluffy lamb. It's a great story.
It's a nice story.
The problem is, as our source material hilariously points out, the lived reality of this proverb is highly suspect.
Highly suspect.
There is this brilliant moment in the transcript where the speakers are debating whether this transition actually holds true, and one of them observes that in their experience, March doesn't go out like a lamb. It goes out like a slightly agitated badger.
That might be the most accurate meteorological description I have ever heard.
Right. An agitated badger.
An agitated badger is entirely distinct from a roaring lion, but it is certainly not a peaceful lamb. It's grumpy.
It's so grumpy.
It's unpredictable, and it will snap at you if you let your guard down. It perfectly encapsulates that lingering, biting chill that can persist right up until the final days of the month.
I can vividly picture the agitated badger weather. It's that day where the sky is technically blue, but the wind feels like it has a personal vendetta against your face.
Yes, a vendetta.
The transcript actually shares this incredibly relatable anecdote to illustrate just how deceitful this environment is.
Oh, the t-shirt story.
Yes. Someone talks about waking up, seeing the sun shining, hearing the birds, and stepping out of their house in a t-shirt.
A rookie mistake in March.
Such a rookie mistake. But it was a remarkably mild morning. It felt like spring had fundamentally arrived.
Right.
And then by noon, the temperature plummeted so drastically that they were standing on the sidewalk, shivering uncontrollably. They had experienced essentially 4 distinct seasons in a 3-hour window.
What's fascinating here is the psychological fallout of that specific experience.
Yeah, the fallout.
Consider how this inherent deception impacts our daily lives. When an environment actively lulls you into a false sense of security, giving you a mild morning, convincing you to leave your heavy coat behind.
Which we all want to do. We are so eager to leave the coat behind.
We are. But then pulling the rug out from under you with a sudden frost or a torrential downpour, it cultivates a very specific kind of anxiety.
It's weather gaslighting.
Exactly.
You stop trusting your own eyes. You look out the window at a clear blue sky and you think, okay, what is the atmosphere plotting?
Precisely. When we are repeatedly deceived by our environment, we become hyper-vigilant. We develop a subtle background hum of distrust toward the natural world.
A background hum of distrust. That's a great way to put it.
This constant state of meteorological suspense requires a highly specific sensory vocabulary to articulate. We need words that describe not just the temperature, but the suddenness, the force, and the physical texture of these rapid shifts in the air and on the ground.
Which perfectly bridges us into these specific sensory extremes that define this time of year, because it's not just cold or warm, it's the extreme manifestation of those states.
Right.
The transcript highlights 4 incredibly evocative descriptors: balmy, gust or squall, boggy or waterlogged, and bright spells.
Let's begin with balmy.
Yes, let's.
From a linguistic standpoint, it is a superb adjective.
Yeah.
It denotes a pleasant, temperate, comfortable equilibrium.
It sounds nice just saying it.
It does. It is the absolute Goldilocks zone of weather. Neither oppressively hot nor bitterly cold. When the air is balmy, it feels soothing.
Yeah.
There is no friction between your body and the environment.
But because we are talking about March, that harmony is almost always a trap.
It is a trap.
You were walking down the street, enjoying this balmy equilibrium, carrying a coffee, feeling optimistic about the trajectory of your life.
And you're ambushed.
Exactly. You were ambushed. You're hit by a gust or a squall.
The juxtaposition is stark. While balmy implies a sustained, peaceful state, a gust or squall is characterized by its suddenness. It is a forceful, abrupt rush of wind. It is not a continuous prevailing breeze that you can brace against. It materializes out of nowhere, exerts a tremendous amount of kinetic energy, and often vanishes just as quickly.
The physical interruption of a squall is just so jarring. You go from a peaceful stroll to literally fighting to keep your coffee cup from being ripped out of your hand.
Yes, the coffee cup struggle is real.
It's a violent intrusion. And it's not just the air that's turning against us, it's the actual earth beneath our feet. The vocabulary for the terrain during this transitional period is equally visceral: boggy and waterlogged.
Boggy is a wonderfully descriptive term. It goes far beyond simply being muddy.
Right. Muddy doesn't quite cover it.
When the earth is waterlogged, it means the soil has reached its absolute point of saturation. It cannot absorb another drop of moisture from the melting snow or the spring rains.
It's just full.
Completely full. The ground entirely loses its structural integrity, resulting in a sludgy, marshy terrain.
The transcript paints this tragic, completely unavoidable picture of the sheer futility of wearing pristine white sneakers to the park in March.
Ooh, a fatal error.
We've all done it. You see the sunshine, you get optimistic, you put on your fresh shoes, and the millisecond your foot leaves the concrete and touches the grass, it sinks into the saturated sponge.
Instant regret.
Instant regret.
Your shoes are instantly caked in a boggy mess. It's an absolute hazard.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, all of these negative sensory experiences, the violent squalls, the deceptive temperatures, the boggy earth, they serve to heighten our sensitivity to positive stimuli.
Oh, that makes sense.
Which brings us to a highly specific, almost therapeutic psychological phenomenon detailed in the lexicon, the bright spell.
This is such a great concept. In meteorological terms, particularly in the UK, a bright spell isn't just a sunny day.
No, it's not.
It is an intermittent period of sunshine that manages to pierce through a generally overcast, heavy sky. It is a momentary fracture in the gloom. And the behavioral response it triggers in human beings is profound. The transcript describes how, when a bright spell occurs, people will flock outdoors en masse.
They really do.
It is an instinctual reflex. The clouds part for perhaps 20 minutes, and suddenly the streets are full. People abandon their desks, they step out of their offices, and they stand on sidewalks just to physically absorb the radiation.
I love the visual of people turning into human sunflowers.
Human sunflowers, yes.
We step outside and we literally pivot our bodies to track the rays of the sun, trying to maximize our exposure before the clouds inevitably close back up. We act as if we've been deprived of sunlight for a decade.
Because biologically we are starved for it. A mere 20-minute bright spell is enough to trigger a mass behavioral shift because our bodies are desperate for that dopamine and vitamin D synthesis after the winter dormancy.
Wow.
We are reacting to the exact same environmental cues as the plant life beneath our feet.
Which makes this the perfect moment to pivot to the actual botanical life emerging around us. Because while we are acting like human sunflowers, the landscape is undergoing a massive, complex transition.
It really is.
This is where we get into the botanical resurgence and the incredible duality of the beauty of spring versus the absolute physiological mutiny it causes.
To accurately describe this resurgence, the transcript provides us with 3 distinct verbs that categorize how the natural world emerges from its barren state.
Right.
Bloom, blossom, and germinate or sprout. Distinguishing between these terms allows us to paint a much more precise picture of the changing landscape.
I will admit I have definitely used bloom and blossom completely interchangeably my entire life.
Most people do.
But the linguistic distinction here is really elegant.
It is. We use bloom primarily for ground flora that is producing flowers and displaying vibrant petals. When the plants push up from the soil and open after a period of dormancy, they are blooming. A daffodil blooms. A tulip blooms.
Right. And then blossom is typically reserved for trees and shrubs, specifically those yielding delicate petals like cherry or apple trees.
Exactly. So you have this wonderful verticality to the language.
I love that. Verticality.
The ground blooms beneath you while the canopy blossoms above you. And preceding both of those is the act of germinating or sprouting. Those tiny, incredibly fragile green shoots actively pushing their way through the thawed, boggy earth to seek the sunlight.
It's the quintessential imagery of renewal. It's deeply therapeutic to witness. But, and this is a massive but, this profound beauty triggers a biological mechanism that spells absolute agony for a massive portion of the population.
Yes.
The dark side of this resurgence is pollen.
It is the ultimate environmental irony. This beautiful botanical awakening is entirely dependent on microscopic, powdery substances discharged by male plants.
It's wild to think about.
It is virtually imperceptible to the naked eye, but it absolutely saturates the atmosphere.
And the phrase the transcript uses for how our bodies react to this invisible powder is just perfect. Physiological mutiny.
It's an incredibly accurate description of the mechanism at play. When these airborne particulates infiltrate the respiratory system of someone who is allergic, their immune system completely misinterprets the data.
It totally misreads the situation.
It does not recognize the pollen as harmless plant dust. It treats it as a lethal invading threat, and it launches a devastating counterattack.
And the collateral damage of that counterattack is allergic rhinitis or hay fever. We aren't just talking about the occasional sneeze.
No, not at all.
We are talking about severe physical discomfort. The transcript details the reality of having a head in a vice, eyes that are chronically inflamed and watering, a completely congested respiratory tract, and a nose that runs incessantly.
The juxtaposition is striking. You are surrounded by spectacular imagery, vibrant, blooming ground cover, delicate pink and white blossoms cascading from the branches.
That was beautiful.
And underneath it all is a human being weeping, sneezing relentlessly, feeling physically crushed by their own immune system's overreaction to the environment's attempt to reproduce.
It's terrible.
It is a literal mutiny. Your
Yeah.
body is rebelling against the spring.
It is both tragic and deeply inconvenient. And because it is so common, the transcript actually highlights a really pragmatic piece of cultural etiquette for navigating this.
Yes, the social aspect is fascinating.
If you are out and about in March and you see a colleague or a friend displaying these severe cold-like symptoms, the absolute worst thing you can do is ask, have you caught a cold?
Yes, this is a crucial nuance of social interaction during this specific window of the year. The advice is to always default to asking, is your hay fever acting up?
Because statistically, 9 times out of 10 during this month, those symptoms are pollen-induced, not viral.
Exactly.
If someone is enduring the absolute misery of a physiological mutiny and you ask if they have a cold, you are unintentionally minimizing their suffering. Giving them the dignity of acknowledging that the very air they are breathing is currently attacking them is just good manners.
It demonstrates environmental awareness.
Yeah.
It signals to the other person that you understand the invisible warfare happening around them.
So, what does this all mean? If we zoom out and look at the picture we've painted, March is essentially a chaotic obstacle course.
An obstacle course, yes.
You are dodging violent wind squalls that try to steal your coffee. You are actively sinking into boggy, waterlogged mud. You are desperately chasing 20-minute bright spells like a lizard looking for a warm rock.
A very apt comparison.
And you are inhaling microscopic powder that causes your immune system to declare war on your own face. The obvious question is, how do human beings survive this month with their sanity intact?
That leads us directly to the tactical defenses we employ. Navigating this erratic environment requires specific, highly intentional strategies, particularly regarding our sartorial choices, what we wear, and our domestic rituals, how we manage our living spaces.
The sartorial dilemma. Getting dressed in the morning during a transitional season is an absolute logistical nightmare.
It really is.
Layering is not just a fashion choice, it is a vital survival mechanism.
Because of the volatility, your wardrobe must be as adaptable as the atmosphere. You might begin your morning commute requiring a heavy insulated overcoat to withstand the frosty dawn.
Right. But by midday, if one of those balmy intervals arrives, that same overcoat transforms into a suffocating liability. You find yourself sweating on the train, desperately needing to strip down to a lightweight cardigan.
You are constantly shedding and adding layers throughout the day. And this brings us to what might be the most underrated piece of clothing ever invented, which the transcript highlights as the ultimate weapon for this specific month, the windbreaker.
Or the wind cheater, depending on your regional dialect.
Right, wind cheater.
It is a masterpiece of utility. It is defined as a lightweight, protective outer garment explicitly engineered to shield the wearer from biting winds and light drizzle.
It is the unsung hero of the closet. It neutralizes those sudden gale force squalls, but it doesn't have the cumbersome bulk of a winter coat.
No bulk at all. You can roll it into a tiny ball, shove it in a tote bag when the bright spell hits, and then whip it back out the second the agitated badger weather returns. It provides maximum environmental shielding with minimum physical burden.
And that concept of shielding and environmental management extends seamlessly from our bodies to our homes. Beyond the sartorial, we have deep-seated domestic rituals tied to this transition, most notably captured in the phrasal verb to air out.
The annual ritual of airing out the residence, it feels so universally understood, but breaking down the mechanics of it is fascinating.
To air out a space means to thoroughly and intentionally ventilate it. It requires opening doors and windows across the residence to generate a cross breeze.
You need that cross breeze.
The objective is to forcefully expel the stagnant, musty air that has accumulated over the long winter months, while drawing fresh, dynamic spring air into the interior.
Think about the physical state of our homes during the winter. We keep our properties entirely hermetically sealed against the colds.
Hermetically sealed.
We plug the drafts, we lock the windows, we trap all the artificial heat inside. But in doing so, we trap everything else. The air becomes stale, the indoor atmosphere literally becomes oppressive. It feels heavy on the lungs.
And the sensory shift that occurs when you finally break that seal on the first truly mild day is remarkable.
It really is.
When you throw open the windows, the transcript notes that it quite literally breathes life back into the household. You can instantly smell the thawed earth. You can feel the kinetic movement of the breeze replacing the stagnant warmth. It completely eradicates the mustiness.
And the impact of that isn't just physical. That act of airing out the house is a profound psychological catalyst.
Definitely.
You aren't just removing dust. You are purging the ghosts of winter. You are clearing out the heavy lethargic mindset that accumulates when you are trapped indoors for months.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the broader psychological impact of this entire season.
Yeah.
All of these elements we've discussed, the volatile weather, the blooming flowers, the sneeze-inducing pollen, the tactical deployment of windbreakers, the dramatic opening of the windows.
All of it.
They all culminate in a massive, palpable shift in our collective consciousness.
It is the ultimate psychological jolt. Because despite all the chaos, despite the mud and the erratic temperature drops, March creates an environment where we are forced to realize that better days are, to use a brilliant idiom from the text, on the horizon.
On the horizon is a highly spatial metaphor applied to time.
A spatial metaphor.
If something's on the horizon, it is imminent. It is impending. You can foresee its arrival. Just as you can look across a physical landscape and see the line where the earth meets the sky, you can look ahead in time and clearly see a shift approaching.
That's a great way to visualize it.
When we recognize that spring is on the horizon, we're acknowledging that while the warmth may not be here today, its arrival is guaranteed and visible.
And holding on to that guarantee is the only way we survive the roller coaster. It requires immense, stubborn optimism.
Stubborn optimism, yes.
You can wake up to a dreary, freezing morning, step in a boggy puddle, ruin your shoes, and get hit by a squall. But the anticipation of those warmer days sustains you. You know the bright spells are coming.
That anticipation is not passive. It is an active catalyst. The transcript uses a very sharp phrasal verb to describe this. The erratic nature of March helps people snap out of their winter lethargy.
To snap out of it, it's such an abrupt, almost violent phrase.
It implies a sudden, forceful break from a previous state. When you snap out of apathy or melancholy or the deep lethargy of winter, it isn't a slow, gentle awakening.
No, not at all.
It is an abrupt shift in momentum. The chaotic, unpredictable, slapping energy of March wind acts as the physical jolt that forces our minds to wake up and re-engage with the world.
Though it is worth noting that the source material features a really interesting debate about the nature of this jolt. The speakers in the transcript don't entirely agree on whether this process is actually beneficial.
Right, there are two distinct perspectives.
One speaker views March as this invigorating, absolutely necessary catalyst. The month shakes you awake.
While the other perspective is much more cynical, viewing the entire month as exasperatingly deceitful. They argue there is a distinct cruelty in tantalizing someone with glorious sunshine, prompting them to optimistically pack away their winter coats, only to unleash a torrential hailstorm the following afternoon.
It is a little cruel.
It raises the question, is it a necessary catalyst for renewal, or is it merely psychological torment that we are forced to endure?
I think it's entirely both. You need the torment to appreciate the renewal, and this is a great moment to turn this outward. For you, listening right now, what does this look like where you live?
Yes, consider your own region.
What are the definitive, undeniable indicators of spring in your specific region? Is it that first, balmy afternoon where you can finally leave the house without a jacket? Is it the sight of a very specific local flower blooming through the frost? Is it the return of migratory birds? Or is it simply the day you finally have to dig your windbreaker out of the closet because a squall almost knocked you over?
Consider how your local environment delivers that jolt. Do the erratic fluctuations ultimately invigorate you, giving you a burst of energy? Or do you find the constant state of meteorological suspense exhausting?
It really is amazing how this single month, these 31 chaotic days, acts as a massive reset button for the rest of the year.
It is the gauntlet we all must run to earn the serenity of the warmer months.
Okay, as we bring this deep dive to a close, let's briefly synthesize the incredible journey we've taken through this vocabulary. We started by exploring the sheer duality of the season, the reality of the meteorological roller coaster, where the environment is erratic and volatile, constantly deceiving us with the lion versus the agitated badger paradigm.
We examine the extreme sensory inputs, the fleeting, perfect equilibrium of a balmy afternoon, inevitably shattered by the ambush of a violent squall.
The squalls always get you.
The peril of navigating boggy, waterlogged terrain, and the instinctual, joy-inducing phenomenon of chasing the intermittent bright spell.
We looked at the botanical resurgence, Understanding the distinct verticality of the ground flora blooming and the tree canopy blossoming, and contrasting that beauty with the absolute physiological mutiny of pollen that triggers the misery of hay fever.
We discussed our tactical survival methods, the sheer utility of the windbreaker to combat those gale force winds, and the deeply rejuvenating domestic ritual of airing out the residence to clear the stagnant winter atmosphere.
And finally, we unpacked the overarching psychological impact. How knowing that spring is on the horizon provides the optimistic jolt we need to forcefully snap out of our winter lethargy.
It is a remarkably robust and nuanced set of vocabulary designed to describe a very complex, universally human experience.
And this is where we hand the baton over to you. Our explicit challenge to you is to actively employ these words in your own life this week.
Yes, actively use them.
When the weather shifts suddenly, don't just call it crazy, call it volatile. When the wind hits you, identify it as a sudden squall. Notice when you are instinctively acting like a human sunflower during a bright spell. Use the words balmy, boggy, and airing out in your daily conversations. By actively applying this advanced lexicon to your surroundings, you permanently integrate it into your vocabulary. You take ownership of the concepts.
And as you begin to use these words, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've spent this time analyzing how to precisely articulate the chaos of this transitional season. But consider this. If learning specific vocabulary allows us to articulate our experiences more accurately, does possessing these exact words actually change our psychological tolerance for the erratic, deceitful environment?
Oh, that is a fascinating question.
Think about the nature of anxiety. When the weather is volatile and deceptive, it feels overwhelming primarily because it feels uncontrollable and unknowable.
Right, it's the unknown.
But when we can put a highly specific name to the chaos, when we can look at a sudden freezing rainstorm and confidently label it an agitated badger or a volatile squall, does it suddenly become easier to endure? When we can articulate the exact nature of the physiological mutiny happening in our bodies, does defining the misery strip it of its power over our mood?
Naming the monster takes away its teeth.
Exactly.
If you can define the chaos, you aren't just a victim of it anymore. You are an observer of it.
Language is not merely a tool for describing our environment. It is a fundamental mechanism for how we cope with it.
What a phenomenal note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We know you have endless options for what to listen to, and we are absolutely thrilled that you chose to spend this time unpacking the nuances of the world with us.
Keep questioning your environment, keep observing the shifts around you, and continue expanding your capacity to describe the world you live in.
Stay curious out there. And remember, no matter how tempestuous the weather gets, no matter how boggy the ground becomes or how violent the gusts are, brighter days are always on the horizon. See you next time.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. It's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, really glad you're here.
Whether you're prepping for a big meeting or you're just catching up on some personal learning.
Or maybe you're just insanely curious about the world around you.
Exactly. If that's you, you are in exactly the right place.
Yeah.
Today, we're looking at something so universal, something so thoroughly embedded in our yearly routines.
But we completely overlook it.
Right. We overlook the profound reality of what it actually means.
We really do.
So our source material for this deep dive is actually a transcript from an advanced language learning show.
Part 2 of their spring series, right?
Yeah, specifically part 2. And, on the surface,
you might look at a transcript from an English learning program and think, oh, okay, it's just going to be a straightforward vocabulary lesson.
Right, like a textbook.
Yeah. But what we're going to do today is dig much deeper into the actual implications of those words.
Because our mission today isn't just to look at this as a simple English lesson. We are going to completely deconstruct the profound psychological,
physiological
and domestic realities that are deeply embedded in the specific vocabulary of seasonal change.
It's so fascinating.
It is. We're looking at how language perfectly captures the human experience of transitioning out of winter.
Because it's a transition we all go through.
Every single year.
But seeing it mapped out through these highly specific terms, it gives you an entirely new perspective on what our bodies and our minds are actually enduring during this time of year.
It really does map the human experience in a way that is it's incredibly validating.
We often treat the change of seasons as a purely meteorological event, right?
Yeah.
Like something that just happens outside of us. But the language we use to describe it reveals that it's this intense internal process as well.
Absolutely. Now, to set the context for you, the listener, this source transcript actually picks up right after a previous discussion.
Right, from part 1.
Right. So in part 1 of their spring series, the speakers were talking about the erratic weather of March.
Oh, the roller coaster.
We all know that meteorological roller coaster where you experience like 3 different seasons in a single afternoon.
Freezing in the morning, sweating by 3 p.m.
Exactly. And they also discussed the botanical awakenings happening outside. But the part of their previous discussion that really anchors our source text today is that one of the speakers was battling a severe case of hay fever.
Which is a brilliant starting point.
Yeah.
Because it immediately grounds the beauty of spring in physical reality.
Right. It's not just pretty flowers.
Exactly. The botanical awakening is visually stunning, but it comes with an immediate physical consequence for a huge portion of the population.
Yeah, that pollen isn't just a sign of life.
No, it is an environmental stressor.
And the text notes the sheer relief of their antihistamines finally kicking in.
Oh, that relief.
We all know that feeling, or at least, we know someone who does. Surviving that meteorological roller coaster of March and getting through that initial aggressive wave of pollen, well, that leads us directly into today's focus.
The dual shocks.
The dual shocks of spring. These are 2 massive shifts that hit us almost simultaneously.
To time, Jason.
In the deep clean.
Yes.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the physiological disruption.
The transition, commonly known as the spring forward.
Right.
This is where the physical reality of the season hits us with an entirely different kind of force. We're moving away from environmental allergens and straight into systemic biological disruption.
Systemic biological disruption. That sounds intense.
It really is.
According to our source material, we have this concept of daylight saving time. And the text defines it very clearly, especially, for international listeners who might not observe it in their respective countries.
Because not everyone does.
Right. Daylight saving time is the practice of advancing the clocks forward by 1 hour during the warmer months.
And to help people remember how this works, there's a very handy English mnemonic mentioned in the source.
Spring forward, fall back.
Yes, spring forward, fall back. It's a highly effective memory device.
You spring forward into the warmer months, advancing that clock.
And then in the autumn, you fall back.
But the mechanical act of advancing the clock is just the superficial layer, isn't it?
Whoa, entirely. The real substance of our source material is the physical toll this artificial manipulation of time takes on the human body.
Because by springing forward, we are literally losing an entire hour of sleep.
Just poof.
Gone.
Gone.
And the text zeroes in on the exact vocabulary we use to describe the aftermath of that loss. The word that really stands out here is groggy.
Groggy?
Yeah, the source defines groggy as feeling dazed, weak, or unsteady from a lack of sleep.
Dazed, weak, or unsteady. I want to highlight how precise that definition is.
It's very specific.
Right. You aren't merely tired or, in need of a cup of coffee. Your literal equilibrium is compromised.
You are unsteady.
Unsteady. It implies a physical vulnerability that goes way beyond ordinary fatigue.
And the text pairs this feeling of being groggy with the experience of waking up utterly sluggish.
Moving like a slug.
Literally, you lose that 1 hour of sleep, and your entire body responds by feeling dazed, weak, unsteady, and sluggish.
It's a lot.
But let's pause on that for a second. It feels incredibly disproportionate to just losing 60 minutes, doesn't it?
It really does.
I mean, people stay up an hour late to watch a movie or read a book all the time.
Sure.
And they don't wake up feeling fundamentally physically compromised the next day.
Right. What's fascinating here is the underlying biological mechanism that the source text brings to light to explain that disproportionate reaction.
Okay, let's hear it.
It all comes down to the term circadian rhythm.
Ah.
The text elaborates on this concept. It defines the circadian rhythm as your body's internal, natural 24-hour clock.
Internal, natural 24-hour clock.
And the primary purpose of this internal clock is to regulate your sleep-wake cycle.
I think the operative word there is natural.
Precisely. It is an ancient natural system. It's tied to the rotation of the planet and the presence of sunlight.
Right.
So when society decides to arbitrarily advance the clocks forward by 1 hour, which, let's be honest, is an entirely artificial construct designed for industrial efficiency, not human health.
Yeah, it creates a violent clash.
A violent clash with that natural internal clock.
The text actually compares this springtime change to a mild form of jet lag.
Yes.
And if you analyze what jet lag actually is, it's a harsh physiological disruption caused by physically moving your body across multiple time zones.
But here you haven't traveled anywhere.
Exactly. You are sitting in your own bed, in your own house.
But your body isn't doing that same harsh physiological disruption.
Simply because of an artificial shift in timekeeping.
It makes perfect sense why it feels so much worse than just staying up late.
Because when you stay up late, you are still operating within your established time zone. But when the clocks spring forward, your body's internal clock is expecting one reality, and the artificial clock on your phone is demanding another.
That conflict between the natural and the artificial is exactly why it takes such a heavy physical toll. You are fighting millions of years of evolutionary biology.
Wow.
Your body is releasing hormones like melatonin based on the position of the sun.
Meanwhile, your alarm clock is screaming at you to wake up based on a corporate schedule.
Exactly. The grogginess and sluggishness aren't signs of weakness. They are the symptoms of a profound biological confusion.
We're essentially imposing a state of jet lag on our entire population simultaneously.
We really are.
But, as with all things, there is a grand trade-off.
There is.
The text doesn't just leave us in this state of sluggish misery. It pivots to the silver lining of this whole daylight saving time arrangement.
The extended daylight.
The extended daylight in the evenings. Think about that sudden shift.
It's dramatic.
It is. All of a sudden, it's 7 p.m., and the sun is still shining brightly.
And the source material is very explicit about the psychological impact of this. It notes that this extended daylight does wonders for your morale.
A massive, immediate psychological uplift.
Oh, yeah.
You go from the dark, oppressive evenings of winter where the day feels like it ends at, 4:30 p.m.?
Basically.
To suddenly having this bright, shining evening. You feel like you have so much more time.
So much more life left in the day.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a complex interplay that the text is highlighting here.
How so?
On one hand, you have this harsh physiological exhaustion. You are groggy, you are sluggish, your circadian rhythm is completely disrupted.
Right.
But on the exact same day, you are handed this immense psychological uplift, the morale boost of the 7 p.m. sun.
It's a dual shock to the system.
It really is. Your body is exhausted, but your morale is soaring.
You're dragging your feet, but you're smiling while you do it.
Exactly.
The psychological boost of the sunlight somehow overrides the physical unsteadiness of the circadian disruption.
It does.
But here is where the text introduces some dark comedy.
Oh, this part.
Because that beautiful, morale-boosting extra sunlight comes with a rather unfortunate side effect.
A very unforgiving side effect that forces us to confront our immediate environment.
The text notes that this extra evening sunlight ruthlessly illuminates all the dust and grime that is accumulated in your house over the dark winter months.
Ruthlessly illuminates. It is an incredibly evocative phrase.
It paints a picture.
It does, because during the winter, the lighting in our homes is largely artificial.
Right, it's softer.
It comes from lamps, it creates shadows. We think our spaces are clean because we simply lack the visual acuity to see the accumulated grime in that dim lighting.
The source gives this highly relatable anecdote to illustrate this exact point.
I loved this part.
Think about your own living room. You spend all winter thinking it's this perfect, cozy space.
Your sanctuary.
Right, you've been hunkered down, feeling quite proud of your domestic sanctuary. But then, daylight saving time hits. You get that extended evening daylight, and the text describes this exact moment. The evening sun hits the windows at just the right angle.
That specific angle is the catalyst for everything that follows.
When the evening sun hits the windows at just the right angle, it entirely shatters the illusion of that cozy living room.
Entirely shatters it.
Suddenly you realize that your sanctuary is actually covered in a layer of dust.
It is a sudden, inescapable visual realization.
You cannot unsee it.
No, you can't.
The sunshine literally becomes a spotlight on the mess you've been living in, blissfully unaware for months.
And this undeniable visual evidence of the winter's accumulation is what forces us into the next phase of the seasonal transition.
The action phase.
Yes. You move from the passive observation of the dust, which you can no longer ignore, to the active labor required to remove it.
The psychological uplift of the extended daylight is immediately tempered by the physical reality of the mess it reveals.
Immediate reality check.
Which brings us to the physical undertaking, the deep dive of cleaning. The text moves from the revelation of daylight saving time right into what it calls the monumental task of spring cleaning.
And the source provides a very specific definition for this.
It does.
The text defines spring cleaning as a thorough, meticulous cleaning of a house, typically undertaken in the spring.
But the crucial distinction it makes is the depth of the endeavor.
Right.
This is not your standard weekly vacuuming.
Or running a damp cloth over the kitchen counter.
No. It is a comprehensive deep dive. And to execute this kind of cleaning, the text uses one of my absolute favorite English idioms.
Oh, elbow grease.
Elbow grease.
Yes.
The anatomy of elbow grease is so perfectly descriptive. The text defines it literally as vigorous physical labor and effort, particularly when you are scrubbing or cleaning something manually.
It's a brilliant idiom because it highlights the necessity of human exertion.
Right. You can't just buy your way out of it.
No, you aren't just relying on a spray, a chemical, or an automated machine. You have to physically generate the friction yourself.
The grease is the sweat.
The strain of your own joints and the mechanical energy of your muscles.
You have to put some elbow grease into it.
You do.
And the source text gives us some relatable and honestly kind of exhausting examples of where this elbow grease is applied.
Very specific examples.
He points out that during spring cleaning, you can't just casually wipe the counters. That is maintenance territory.
Right.
Spring cleaning means you are washing the curtains.
You are down on your hands and knees, scrubbing the baseboards.
And it mentions the ultimate application of elbow grease.
Oh, pulling the sofa away from the wall.
Pulling the sofa away from the wall to see what horrors lie beneath it.
What horrors lie beneath it.
That phrase from the text is vivid. We all know those horrors.
We really do.
The dust bunnies, the lost pens, the unidentifiable crumbs that have just been accumulating in the dark all winter long.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, these specific physical chores, scrubbing the baseboards, washing the curtains, facing the horrors beneath the sofa, they represent something much larger than hygiene.
What do they represent?
It's a reclaiming of the domestic space.
Reclaiming it.
Yes. During the winter, there's a stagnation. We are indoors, things are closed up to keep the heat in, the air is stale, and the dust settles.
Yeah.
Applying this vigorous physical labor, this elbow grease, is the act of physically fighting back against that stagnation.
That makes so much sense.
You are reclaiming your environment through sheer physical effort.
You are literally sweating out the winter stagnation.
Exactly.
You are forcing the staleness out of your home by moving heavy furniture and creating friction.
Yes.
And once you've tackled the physical dirt with elbow grease, the text introduces us to what it calls the most crucial phase of the entire spring cleaning process.
This is a major shift.
Right. This is where it shifts from the physical to the highly psychological.
The text identifies this psychological purge as decluttering.
Decluttering. The source defines it clearly: to remove unnecessary items from an untidy or overcrowded space.
And it points out that over the winter months, human beings have this profound tendency to hoard things.
The winter accumulation.
It's a documented phenomenon. The text lists specific examples of the things we hoard during this time.
Like what?
Layers of clothing, old magazines, and various knickknacks.
Just stuff.
Just stuff. We gather these things around us, almost like a form of insulation against the cold and the dark outside.
We build these little nests of stuff.
Nests, yes.
We surround ourselves with objects to create a false sense of warmth or security.
And the text gets very specific about what it actually means to hoard.
Right.
The expert definition provided in our source material is that to hoard means to excessively collect and keep things, often items of little value, to the point where it becomes unmanageable.
Excessively collect and keep things of little value.
That is the defining characteristic of hoarding as presented here.
So it's not about being a collector.
No. It isn't about collecting valuable antiques or preserving important historical documents. It's about holding on to things that no longer serve a purpose.
Until the sheer volume of them becomes an unmanageable problem.
A problem that degrades the quality of your living space.
And nothing illustrates keeping items of little value until they become unmanageable, quite like the anecdote provided in the source text.
Oh, this was too real.
It is the ultimate confession. One of the speakers admits to being guilty of hoarding old charging cables.
The infamous cable drawer.
They specifically say they have a drawer full of cables for devices that became obsolete a decade ago.
We all know it.
I have to ask you, the listener, directly, do you have that one drawer?
You know exactly the one we mean.
The drawer filled with tangled black cords.
Proprietary chargers for a phone you haven't owned since 2014?
Maybe a random adapter for a device you can't even identify anymore?
What does this even plug into?
Right. The text literally states, we all have that one drawer.
It is a universal human experience.
To shove those obsolete cables into a dark space and just ignore them.
It is universal, but it demands analysis. Why do we keep them?
Yeah, why?
We keep them out of a misplaced sense of utility. We think, what if I need this obscure mini USB cable someday?
Just in case.
Right, just in case. But really, it's an inability to let go of the past. It's an anchor to obsolete phases of our lives.
That's deep.
We allow these useless items to take up valuable physical real estate in our homes, which eventually translates to taking up mental real estate.
Taking up mental real estate.
Yeah.
That is exactly it. And the text points to the solution for this, which is the therapeutic purge.
Yes.
The text introduces a powerful English proverb. A cluttered space equals a cluttered mind.
It's a straightforward proverb, but its implications are vast.
Vast.
The text claims that the act of purging these useless items, like finally throwing away those decade-old obsolete cables, is incredibly therapeutic.
Incredibly therapeutic.
We have to analyze why the destruction or removal of property is described as a therapy.
It comes down to control and order.
Exactly.
When you systematically sort through your belongings, as the text suggests, and you discard the excess, you are removing the physical manifestations of chaos from your life.
And the text says this yields a profound sense of relief.
A profound sense of relief. You are asserting dominance over your environment.
Because the winter hoarding was a passive act of gathering.
Right.
But the spring decluttering is an active, intentional assertion of what belongs in your life and what does not.
You are making a choice.
The relief comes from eliminating the low-level chronic stress of navigating around objects that have no purpose.
You aren't just emptying a drawer. You are emptying a part of your brain that was subconsciously keeping track of all that useless clutter.
You are lifting a mental weight.
Which leads us directly into the ultimate payoff of this entire grueling process.
The reward.
You've endured the circadian disruption.
Check.
You've survived the spotlight of the sun on your dust.
Okay.
You've applied the exhausting elbow grease.
And you've confronted your own hoarding habits.
Now you arrive at the reward. So what does this all mean?
The text refers to this reward as achieving a clean slate.
The clean slate.
Yes.
The source material defines a clean slate as an opportunity to start over without prejudice.
Or, specifically in the context of our discussion today, it means to start the new season with a fresh, organized environment.
So what does this all mean for the person who just spent their weekend scrubbing baseboards?
It means that the physical environment has been entirely reset.
A total reset.
The text introduces the phrase spick and span to describe this final destination.
The text defines spick and span as entirely clean, neat, and impeccably tidy.
Impeccably tidy.
And it gives a great example sentence to show how satisfying it is. The satisfaction saying that after a weekend of spring cleaning, your kitchen is finally spick and span.
Entirely clean, neat, and impeccably tidy. It is the absolute absence of the grime and the clutter that accumulated over the winter.
It is the visual proof that the elbow grease and the decluttering were successful.
It really is.
This brings us to one of the most beautiful concepts highlighted in the entire source text.
I love this part.
It's a quote that really anchors the whole transcript. The text states that when your house is finally spick and span, the psychological toll of winter just washes away with the dust.
The psychological toll of winter just washes away with the dust.
That is so poetic.
It explicitly links the physical act of cleaning to an internal feeling of renewal and revitalization.
Because the dust isn't just physical dirt.
Exactly. It represents the stagnation, the darkness, the lethargy, and the isolation of winter.
All of that.
By washing away the dust, you are metaphorically and psychologically washing away the winter itself.
You feel revitalized. The deep connection between the physical act of scrubbing the baseboards and the internal feeling of starting fresh with a clean slate is undeniable.
Undeniable.
It proves that this isn't just about having a tidy house for guests.
No, not at all.
It is about actively managing our mental and emotional transition into a new season.
And the vocabulary perfectly traces that journey from physical exhaustion to psychological renewal.
It really does. The vocabulary arsenal that you, the listener, have just acquired from this source text is incredibly robust.
Very robust.
When you put these C1 level words together, they construct a complete narrative of seasonal transition.
They map the entire process.
Let's run through it.
We started with the physical disruption of being groggy.
That dazed, sluggish feeling from a lack of sleep after the clocks change.
Because our circadian rhythm, our internal 24-hour clock, gets completely thrown off when we spring forward and advance the clocks for daylight saving time.
Once the extra sunlight hits, we have to apply elbow grease
That vigorous physical labor.
to scrub away the winter dirt.
And while we apply that elbow grease, we also have to declutter.
Organizing and removing unnecessary items because of our tendency to hoard useless things.
Like old magazines over the winter.
Or those cables.
Always the cables.
But once that is done, we are rewarded with a clean slate.
A fresh start in an environment that is finally spick and span.
Impeccably clean and neat.
It is a perfect narrative arc built out of these terms.
It really is. The source text ends with a direct call to the audience, asking questions that I want to pose to you, the listener, right now.
Okay.
Do you observe daylight saving time where you are, and does it leave you groggy?
Are you a meticulous spring cleaner, or do you have a secret drawer of obsolete cables?
It is an invitation to examine which part of this seasonal transition mirrors your own domestic life.
To look at your own space.
Think about your own habits. I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the language of spring shifts.
It's been great.
It's amazing how a transcript from a language learning show can reveal such universal truths about human domestic habits and our psychological connection to the changing seasons.
This raises an important question based on everything we've analyzed today.
What's that?
We have seen how the arbitrary angle of the evening sun can suddenly expose our physical mess.
Yes.
We have seen how the act of clearing that physical mess yields a profound sense of relief that literally washes away the psychological toll of winter. It makes you wonder, if our internal mood, our morale, and our sense of renewal are so heavily dictated by the arbitrary changing of a clock and the systematic organization of obsolete cables in a drawer,
Yeah.
how much of our so-called internal mental state is actually just a direct reflection of our external physical environment?
Are our minds just mirroring our living rooms?
It's a profound thought.
That is something to seriously ponder as you look around your own space today. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.